you're ready to get going.
Sure. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the February 13th meeting of the Washington County Coordinating Committee. I'll go ahead and start off with item number 1 of our agenda, which is public comment. Stephen, do we have anybody who'd like to comment?
We didn't have anyone who signed up ahead of time, but if there is anyone who's in the attendees that would like to be able to address the committee, you can use the raise hand feature. I don't see any hands going up, sir.
All right. Oh, that'll move us on to introductions and roll call. Last month, we had several new mayors join our group, but I also want to welcome several alternates. There's Councilor Gonzalez will be my alternate from Tualatin. Council President Mays will be the alternate from Sherwood. Councilor Paulson from King City, and finally Councilor Gustafson from Forest Grove. And today, I believe we're having Councilor James Faye join us as the alternate for Mayor Lanahan. Is he here? I don't see him in the panelists.
I don't believe he's joined just yet. And then Teresa, Mayor Lube is in the attendees, if you could. Yep, thank you. All right.
All right.
But we'll keep an eye out for him.
All right. And we have a familiar face joining us representing Washington County, Commissioner Rogers. Welcome. All right, that brings us up to action items. Actually, you got to do the roll call. Sorry, go ahead and kick it off, Stephen.
All right, thank you. And again, going by alphabetical order for jurisdictions, for Banks, Mayor Jones.
Here.
Thank you. Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
Here.
Thank you. Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Present.
Thank you. I don't believe we have Mayor Sherrado on just yet, but we'll keep an eye out for him. For Durham. Forest Grove, I think we might be expecting Councilor Gustafson today. Is that right?
No, I think Mayor Wenzel.
Mayor Wenzel? Okay. All right.
I didn't hear about it otherwise.
Okay. All right. We will keep an eye out. For Hillsborough, we have Mayor Callaway.
Present.
Thank you. For City of King City, Mayor Fender.
Here.
Thank you. City of North Plains, Mayor Linehan or Councilor Faye, I don't see yet, so we will keep an eye out there as well.
And just to know, we will change that roster. We just heard about this on Friday, so we'll update our roster for North Plains.
Great. And then for City of Sherwood, Mayor Rosner.
Here.
Thank you. City of Tigard, Mayor Lube.
Here.
Thank you. City of Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Here.
Thank you. City of Wilsonville, do we have Mayor Fitzgerald? Or
Mayor Fitzgerald is in the attendees, raised their hand raised.
great.
Oh.
Thank you. I'll have Teresa move her over. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Fitzgerald. And for Washington County, we have Commissioner Rogers today as our alternate.
Alternate to the alternate. I'm here.
Thank you. All right. I think with that, we are ready to go, Chair. Sorry, just to acknowledge, we do have some of our non-voting members. I saw Councilor Rosenthal representing Metro. Thank you.
Yep, here.
And do we have an ODOT rep?
Hopefully we will soon.
Right. And I saw Tara O'Brien from TriMet is with us today too. Thank you, Tara.
And Matt Friedtag is here, can be promoted.
Great. All right. Okay. Well, I think we're ready to go then, Chair. Thank you.
All right. That brings us up to item number 3, which are action items for today. First thing up, we have consideration of our meeting summary for January 9th, 2023. Did anyone see anything in the minutes that needs to be corrected? Seeing people's pictures pop up. Okay, I don't see anybody with any objections. So do I have a motion, a second to accept the meeting summary as proposed?
So
moved.
Second.
I think it was a tie between Jamie for moving and Jeff for seconding.
Oh, there's Gary Sherrod.
Oh, here goes Mary Sherrod. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. I just had trouble getting on. Thank
All
you.
right. So with that, I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting summary for January 9th. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Looks like it's unanimous, Stephen. All right. That brings us item 3B, the transportation development tax increase. This is an item that we're not voting on. This is just a presentation from Erin Wardell for us to review and comment the proposed rate increase. So Erin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Planning and Development Services Manager for Washington County. You have before you an action item on our Transportation Development Tax Annual Rate Index. We do this once a year. It is established within the TDT ordinance that annually the rate will be adjusted based on a rolling 5-year average of 3 cost components of our projects. And those cost components are labor, materials, and essentially the cost of right-of-way. So there is a memo in your packet describing this methodology in a little bit more detail. The Board of Commissioners, it's a non-discretionary action, but the Board of Commissioners does approve going forward with it every year. So with that, this is your opportunity to discuss and give any comments to the board in advance of that decision. We are looking at a 6.01% increase this year after our rate adjustment calculation. That's a bit higher than it has been in recent years. Again, it's based on that 5-year rolling average. With rates of inflation, we're not surprised to see a higher number this year. And that is all I have to say for the staff presentation.
All right, thanks, Erin. Comments that we'd like to have shared with the board on the TDT rate increase. I'm not seeing any hands up. Do you see any hands up, Stephen?
I
All
do.
right. All right. Sounds like we're okay with the rate increase. That moves us on to item 3C, which is a TPAC alternative nomination and vote. And this will be led by Mayor Callaway.
Thank you. So first of all, in terms of the question, do we do it via email? Do we do it in the meetings? We went back. So when we started doing the email was because we had some folks who represented their city that were non-mayors and wanted the opportunity to go back and check with their mayors and their council. So that was then one reason why we quit doing it in the moment. And then the other one was COVID. So the question as to whether or not it's ethics violation, I did talk to the Ethics Commission, and they deal with meetings like executive session meetings, and they said so. This wouldn't fall under an ethics violation. She did say that typically they look and say, is it, are the votes publicly available? Are they recorded? And everything is yes on that. The only thing is, it's just not done in public. But I don't know how you do a public vote if you're going to have the 36 or 48-hour window, so people can go back and talk to their mayor and or council. So that may be, now that we don't have councilors representing their cities, that latter issue is moot. And then the next question is, are we subject to public meeting laws, since this is a Washington County Coordinating Committee public meeting? And the answer to that, based on some legal conversations, is probably not, because what Washington County does is give us a place to have this vote, but it's not part of the official duties of the WCCC or of Washington County. So it would be no different if, I guess if we just happen to hold, if we happen to meet monthly at Tigard during their, to do something like this during their meeting, because we all happen to be down there playing bingo or for whatever purpose may be down in Tigard. One of the people said it may be more of a policy decision, and that's kind of what you've done in the past when you agreed that you do that you would hold the vote open for people to check with their mayor or their council, or also kind of a policy decision when it was decided via Zoom not to do it in person anymore. So it may be that since there's no clear-cut direction, we just say, what do folks want? Do you want to do it publicly on Zoom, and then eliminate any window of voting and checking back with council? So either you vote now in the moment, or you basically are giving up the opportunity for your city to have a vote. Or do we want to make sure that we give people the chance to go back and check with their mayor and or council if we ever have that point where the mayor's not going to sit in on WCCC on a regular basis? I don't really particularly care one way or the other. I'm just here to lead the vote because that's what the largest city is required to do. So I'm open to, without taking too much time, decide what folks want to do.
All right. At our meeting on Friday, we discussed this, the Washington County mayors discussed it, and I feel the message, the majority of folks would like to vote publicly by a hand vote here, but I can see, all the hands disappeared. I know Mayor Beatty had her hand up and Mayor Rosner, but yeah, in our discussion on Friday, I think it was a big majority of folks wanted to vote in person here today via Zoom by a hand vote, and that we had the weekend to discuss with our councils and staff on the two people who are offering to serve as the alternate. Mayor Beatty.
I'm sorry to have missed our meeting mayors on Friday. I'm at the stage of my pregnancy that requires weekly monitoring, and I felt like you didn't want to sit in on that for your own protection. But what I would have said on Friday as well is that I think a public vote in public is the right way to go. And maybe it's not a direct ethical violation, but it's definitely an optical issue for me. I would also say this is never sprung on us. We have agendas, we talk about it, we know it's coming. I mean, I suppose in the event of, I can't even imagine where we would be sprung in the moment to vote on this. So I think that argument is just not as appealing to me. And I think, the public vote is the way and the preference I would like to go.
Other comments? All right. With that, Mayor Rosner, and then
yeah, just real quick. I'm fine with where the group's moving. You might have seen my email. After hearing the candidates and everything, it would be nice to be able to go back and talk to staff and talk to council about it. But as I said in the other meeting, I'm not going to die on the hill on this. So,
Mayor Lou.
Thank you. I just want to say that I believe it's important to vote in person. And as I discussed as a council, I mean, when we were all on Zoom, we did everything as a roll call vote, even down to adjourning. And so I just feel like that transparency is really important.
All right. Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and ask Mayor Callaway to introduce the two candidates for alternate.
Thank you. And are there two, or is there also the gentleman from Tigard?
I'm only aware of Gene and Greg at this point.
Okay, very good. Then I think Gene is there, and Greg is there. Good. Thank you for joining us. So that, Gene, do you want to take, and Chair Bubenek, I don't know, 2-3 minutes. I'll let you decide.
Yeah, it's about 2 minutes.
All right, very good. And so, Stephen Roberts, would you be the timekeeper, and Gene will turn it over to you, and we'll start when you start. Thanks.
Great, thanks. It's good to see you all here today. Thanks for considering me for this position. So I'm Jean Seneschal Biggs. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager here at the City of Beaverton. I have been at Beaverton just a little over 3.5 years. And in the time that I have served in this role, and I've really sort of begun to see the strength of Washington County at the regional table. That was something that I had heard about before I joined the city. It's something that the county is well known for. And really the element of sort of sticking together as a team and working together was something that I think is really a key part of how we do our work. There's big policy work ahead this year. And that's something that in the TPAC alternate role is really going to be the focus. So we've heard so much about the RTP. By the end of this year, we will have a new RTP. So there's a big lift there. There's also all the other work that's happening around us, around tolling, Interstate Bridge, Rose Quarter, TV Highway, West Side Multimodal Study. There's a lot of work and activity happening that will be before TPAC and also be before JPAC later this year. So the key piece that I think about with this role is that it's both about the work within the meetings that we attend. It's about participating there and showing up and navigating those decisions, but it's also about the work leading up to those decisions and working behind the scenes with not only my peers here in Washington County and with Mike McCarthy, who's our TPAC regular member who's seated in that role now, but also reaching out across the county to my peers and really trying to seek consensus and making sure that the voices that you all bring as the mayors of Washington County to this table, there's my timer, that you all are represented there, that we carry your voice. So there's my thoughts on this role. It would be a great pleasure to get to serve. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Greg Snyder.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. So my name is Greg Snyder, and I'm the Transportation Planning Supervisor for the City of Hillsborough. I've been at the city for about 8 years now, and I tell you, it's been one of the greatest experiences of my professional career. I spent about a third of my time, as I mentioned in the letter, managing growth areas up in North Hillsborough and Jackson East and South Hillsborough and the Witch Hazel Village South community plan areas. So a good third of my time is actually building and construction. I'm sorry, did I glitch out there for a second? I'm so sorry about that. So I was describing a third of my time as being really dedicated to the growth areas of Washington County in terms of the financing, planning, and delivering of residential housing units and industrial land sites. Second third of my time is in infrastructure, and it's been in direct design, build, construction, as well as planning and outlining new roadway and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So I lead a team of consulting and engineering expertise here at the city, where we do plan, design, and construction management of all different kinds of projects. Just the last major one was the intersection of Cornelius Pass Road and TV Highway, $42 million that we just constructed in 2018 that kicked off the South Hillsborough growth area. And another third of my time roughly is spent attending meetings very similar to this. So I attend as a fly on the wall, if you will, the TPAC meeting, the JPAC meeting, as well as this meeting, as well as being on the board of the Washington Transportation Alliance and other activities in the community. So I keep my ear open and my eyes wide open so that I can understand those sorts of developments. I'd be happy to serve. Thank you.
All right, so those are the two candidates, and so I guess with that, we'll just have the roll call by either Stephen or Chris.
Okay, well, why don't we, let's see, we'll just go in alphabetical order then. How about that? So let's do maybe show of hands for Jean Seneschal-Biggs. Chris, if you can help me count, I see 1, 2, three hands.
I was wondering if we should use the virtual hand. Would that be more? Did you count everything, Stephen?
I think I did, but that's not
Okay.
a bad suggestion. Yeah, folks want to do
Is a roll call better for the public recording of the vote?
we can do that as well. Okay, so you want to just go? We can just go line by line.
Okay.
All right, I'll do that. Okay, let's see. So for Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
Jean,
And Cornelius, Mayor Delane.
Greg.
Durham, Mayor Sherrod. Oh, sorry, you're muted, sir.
Greg.
Thank you. City of Forest Grove, Mayor Wenzel.
Greg.
City of Hillsborough, Mayor Callaway.
Snyder.
King City, Mayor Fender.
Apologies. Jean.
Thank you. City of Sherwood, Mayor Rosner.
Greg Snyder.
City of Tigard, Mayor Lube.
Jean.
Thank you. Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Greg Snyder.
For Wilsonville, Mayor Fitzgerald.
I am abstaining for this vote because I come into the category of cities of Clackamas County.
Okay. All right. And just a note, we did skip over Banks and North Plains because they're outside the metro boundary, and then we're also skipping over Washington County because this is a cities of metro of Washington County position. Okay, well, thank you all. So it does appear that Greg carried the majority.
Well, thank you. We're going to do a little bit of agenda management here because there is an RTP amendment. So I'm going to ask ODOT and TriMet to do their presentation now, and then we'll have the Washington County RTP project list after ODOT and TriMet. So whoever wants to lead off, TriMet or ODOT, with your presentation, welcome.
I think mine's a little shorter. Tara, you want me to go first?
That would be great, Glenn. Thank you.
All right. Now, just the miracle of sharing my screen, getting it right, and PowerPoint all at the same time. See if I can do it first try. I have ready to go. Okay, I think I got it first try. All right, so you see my title slide, everyone? Okay. Forward here. Oops, I went 2 slides back. So, okay. So first I want to just real quickly describe the way ODOT's project list works. Our list, even though we're big, is actually a smaller list than a lot of local jurisdictions. And this comes into the way we structure our work. So I'll just give you a brief rundown of this. What you see in the RTP project list are mostly capital projects. These are places where we have specific design solutions, and we're moving forward with those. So you think about IBR, Rose Quarter, those kind of things. We also have these corridor-wide projects, and these are places we don't have specific solutions. And I'll give you some examples here earlier, but we know we want to work within a corridor, and so we've put a project in there. And then we have another part of our list, which are called, which I call region-wide. Some people call these buckets, some call them programs. This is where the majority of ODOT work actually takes place. Other than the mega projects, which are the UMO, our day-to-day stuff comes out of these. This is how, like, the Lombard safety upgrade happened. This is how the new rapid flash beacon in Cornelius was installed, was through these programmatic buckets. So just some examples there. So essentially our list, you'll see it's only like 20 items. It's staying pretty much the same as it was before. We've taken away a few projects, I think actually 4 or 5, depending if some are multi-phased. And we're keeping things in the same, time period, in year versus out year with the whole 2023 versus 2031. We have a couple of new ones. One is the Regional Mobility Pricing Project, which you've heard about. So this is the project, the description basically at this point, we have a NEPA, but we know we need to install gantries. And so we have a project in the RTP so we can do that work, the NEPA work. then we're adding the tolling to the description of the I-205 widening construction project. So that happens with tolling. This makes sense. That's the mechanism by which it's paid. And then there's a small little one. Thankfully, Congressman Blumenauer gave us an earmark to finish a trail segment on the Sandy River Gorge, but it needs to be in the RTP. So I've got a quarter mile of trail that's going to be our new addition to the RTP. Oops, let's see. My mouse is a little sensitive. Okay, so if you look at the screen here, this was, if you were on this meeting 5 years ago in June, you probably saw a map that looked like this that was used for coordinating projects. I found that map and I just added some stars to it to show where the work has been done. So the Metro says, take it off the list if it will be substantially complete by the time this new plan's adopted. So, you all seen the construction on 217. There's actually 3 projects there that will be substantially complete by the time this is done. The I-205 box lanes are done. There's no more crews out there. Outer Powell, I'm gonna call it done, but I'm leaving it in the RTP just because there's a little bit of work that's gonna happen early next year. And same with the Abernathy Bridge. That's fully committed fund-wise, but it's on there because the instructions I got were until they've checked off the acceptance list of all the materials, leave it on the list. But otherwise, it's the money is been spent, accounted for, so committed. So I made a new map with all of our named projects. Now you can see there's 20 little blobs, little circles, and so I can walk through them a little bit here. But you can see that there's those capital projects with the fat blue lines. The corridor wide projects are the thinner blue lines, and then items that were on our strategic list are carried forward as these kind of purple-ish lavender lines. So I mentioned our buckets I talked about earlier, just in case you're not familiar with them. We have bridge, culvert, highway maintenance, pavement maintenance, safety and operations. So another example, we talked about safety was the mechanism for funding the rapid flash beacon in Cornelius Pass. That pavement maintenance is the project in Tigard that is for most of 99W through Tigard, repaving, filling in the bike lane, modifying some access, and finishing the sidewalks. So that's coming out of those operational buckets. So you'll see that project moving forward. I'm sure Matt's talked to you about it a little bit in the past already. So what I've done is I just followed the pattern they had last time, and I just kind of made snapshots of the map by corridor. So I think this is more of a kind of a Q&A kind of session. I think I'm going to jump over so you can see on 217 there's a braided ramps project that's still on the list that is from Canyon or from Beaver Hills Highway South. I think to Allen, that's still on the list for the next RTP because the ox lanes have been completed. There's a flyover. I'm thinking what's relevant to the area. There's a braided ramps at Nyberg coming off 205. So people making that kind of Clackamas, North Clackamas to Hillsborough, Washington County commute. There'll be a flyover there. There's also braided ramps in that Nyberg area as well to help hit that bottleneck. Boone Bridge, for those who are traveling I-5 are familiar with that one as well. There's so that's kind of what's new. You'll see also it's got another map too, but number 15, let me find the map of the west side. There's 2 things. So I actually show this first. A couple things that we brought over from strategic that I think are important to this group are an I-405 project and a Highway 26 project. These are those undefined projects. When we figure out what the needs are, we develop specific projects. This is the avenue by which we can do those projects. So right now, many of you are involved in the West Side multimodal study. So for that reason, having 405 and 26 in the current timeframe RTP is pretty important. Projects come out of that, we can deliver on what the business community is asking for if we can get the funds because we have a vehicle by which to do the work. So not just the business community, but I'm sure they're pretty engaged as everybody. Anyway, I think that's, there's my 26 corridor. So you can see that is the last slide I really need to show. I think now I'm just up to questions, or it could be on to Tara.
Let's open the floor to questions for Glenn. Commissioner Rogers.
Glenn, it's nice to see you. I know at the R1 Act, we've seen part of this, but not all of it. Are any of your assumptions assuming tolling on any other roads? Because you're only talking about I-5, 205. I get that, but as you know, it's a statewide program when it's triggered, and every corridor is not known. But are you in any of your assumptions, including tolling revenue?
Yes. Okay. So there are, I think I would say there are 3 things for sure right now we know about tolling. And when I say for sure, what we know sometimes isn't a lot. But the 205 widening, that is connected to tolling for that facility. The interstate bridge replacement is connected to tolling for that facility. This is important because we need to show fiscal constraint with our RTP project list. So we need to show that we have funding allocated, or can get, and that's what allocated per se, but funding source identified. So a combination of tolling and then an IBR, also discretionary funds. And then there's the regional mobility pricing program. And that one so far is in as an expense, which is roughly the cost of, the set up the back house and setting up the I think it's like 17 or something gantries that would be installed. And so that's controlled within our income level. We don't have any other projects identified that are based on use of revenue from the RMPP, the Regional Mobility Pricing Program. We are having higher level discussions about, about how this all goes down with Metro in the future, but that's kind of a ways out there. So that's where we're at right now.
All right. Mayor Sharado.
Thank you, but I wanted to compliment you. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and that is to thank you for the maps that you were using in your presentation. I noticed that for the first time, and I can't recall how many meetings of different committees, you actually have Durham on your map. So thank you very much for giving us the acknowledgement of our peer cities.
Thanks. I don't know if you're aware, but our office right now is in Durham. We've been using our.
Oh yes, I am aware. Yes, I know you've moved into a high rent district.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Mayor Lou.
Thank you so much. I'm, fairly new to looking at the RTP process with ODOT, and so I appreciate the presentation. I do just have a general comment, something I wish would get a little bit more attention. As we know, our urban arterials are dangerous because of the lack of historical funding, and people are really getting hurt and killed. And it would be nice to see a designated pot of money identified to really work on these corridors, and so they can be brought up to states of good repair and turned over to the cities who are ready and willing, like Tigard, to take them over. So I wanted to definitely highlight that.
Thank you. And for those who aren't aware, we are working closely with the city of Tigard on Hall Boulevard. Matt's working a lot on that. So with Kristen Stallman at our office, trying to work toward that ultimate transfer. And I'm waiting on OPO to get a contract out for design work on Farmington Road. Ultimately, the Washington County segment ultimately aimed at making that a nicer, better, safer facility that could ultimately be transferred. One thing I would like to note that is that we have the operations, maintenance, preservation, bucket or program I talked about, the safety and operations that we fund arterial work with. And one thing we are doing, Mayor, is we're changing I'm proposing that the definition of that, the description of that, to say projects to improve safety and or operation efficiency, such as pedestrian crossings, speed feedback signs, transit priority technology at signals on arterial roads, railroad crossing repair, slide rock fall protections, illumination, signs, signals operations, sidewalks, bicycle lanes, and other improvements that do not add motor vehicle capacity. So we're trying to be a little more specific about how we and more open about describing what we're using those funds for. So when I talk with Kenny and Dave at the city about Hall Boulevard, like that's where the funding would be on the ODOT side for that Hall Boulevard work. I wrote down your comment though. I'm going to read up the line. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for your partnership. City of Tigard really appreciates it.
Thanks.
Mayor Rosner.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate the information and the presentation. Thank you very much. I just have to put a plug in for 99 West. It's continually disappointing that it's not even identified as a corridor of focus in the plan, especially with the changing trends and where people are living and working. We're seeing, Yamhill County is getting built out at tremendous rate. All those people are getting funneled up 99 trying to get to the work centers. So I know there's concern about adding capacity, but 99 needs some work. We're having safety issues out here, and I just had an opportunity to put that plug in again, so I'm going to do it. So
Appreciate it.
thank
I wrote
you.
it down.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Glenn, just a question well, first of all, I want to support what Mayor Rosner said. 99 deserves some attention, and it usually gets omitted. But I have a question. I just sort of want to follow up on what Commissioner Rogers mentioned. I want to clarify. I think you said that tolling is being considered on other routes, but there's only two for which specific projects, that is the Abernathy or the Abernathy and 205 and the IBRT, that are being considered for projects that are specifically tied to tolling at this point in time. So that would mean that, for example, the cover project is not tied to a tolling revenue and do you have a list of the other highways or the other state roads on which tolling might be considered?
We do not yet at this time. My understanding with the RMPP team is they're at such an early stage in NEPA, they don't have any way to project revenues, and still don't know what the performance outcomes could be because they're just getting into NEPA right now. So there are two federal programs for tolling. One is like we're familiar with, like Bridge of the Gods. It's for a specific project. So that's what we're looking at right now. That specific program that's like tolled at IBR, tolled at Abernathy Bridge.
Right.
Yeah, and so those are the only ones that have an identified funding source, an identified amount. And even with that, you might be aware there's also planned discretionary revenues from the feds that need to fill that gap because we can't even cover those with the tolling, is my understanding. But the next piece, not yet. We don't know. Like I say, they're just early in the NEPA process, and so I don't know. Again, they have to balance congestion, VMT, and revenue. And that's gonna be a lot of work. So that's an OTC job, not a Glen Bolen job, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Rogers.
I don't want to keep Glenn going too deep on this, but I think it's important as the state, OTC and the regional act start looking at these programs, because you didn't pass it. You're only talking about two highways, and Garrett was kind of getting at that. It's across the system. I mean, every 217, 6, I mean, it could be anything, 99W, that we get some assurances that you will at least discuss those things with these folks before you start modeling. And what my question was, are the facilities going to use any revenues off of tolling? And I think you said no. And I understand, I was there 5 years ago when we did the last RTP. You're saying, no, there isn't any projects in here that would not be done without modeling, if that makes sense. I'm saying you're not counting on any revenue. And I would hope that you wouldn't come back in 3 or 4 years and say, well, gee, Tim, the only way that 99W could work is if we put a few toll gates out there, and that's how we plan it, even though this project's not there. Or more importantly, the city of Beaverton, the city of Tigard, that you wouldn't be putting toll gates across 217 saying the only way we can do these braided ramps, because 217, when we argue that, is one of the big 3 regional projects. That, and as you know, Abernathy, and the other one was Rose Quarter. That goes back 5, 6 years ago. We really didn't assume that there was going to be a tolling. We assumed that there'd be federal partner money. So I'm droning on. I don't mean to be, but I think it's very, very important that there are some assurances that there'll be some inclusion of these mayors, so that, the mayor of Wilsonville, she doesn't understand, she may not hear about her bridge project having tolls across it before anything is even approached. So I think I've made my point. I think it's important.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor Rosner.
I can find my mute button. Yeah, I don't know if this is a question or like to hear your comments, but how much coordination is your organization doing with other agencies within the state? Like, for instance, DLCD, the the regulatory process that put together HB 2001, the rulings on there. And the reason I bring this up is because we have all this stuff coming at us. We have new rules on, we can't set parking requirements for commercial development, for instance, or HB 2001 in terms of we only have 3 on-site parking spots for a quad. And the cities sit at the nexus of all that. So like a city in Sherwood, which is being told you need to reduce parking, you need to encourage people to use alternate modes of transportation or do something different. We don't have those alternatives in our city, right? So how much coordination are you doing with other agencies in terms of developing these plans and making sure it's complementary, like even like TriMet? Are those conversations happening at the state level? And it kind of gets to what Commissioner Rogers just said, and how much conversation is happening out in the communities that are affected, because it is a long-term plan.
Yep.
And these are long-term issues.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor, I think, some things you're getting at obviously go, far beyond an RTP. All right. We have the state agency coordinating agreements. We have this, I forget what the term is, but it's something CCC coordination with regional planning with the transit providers and with ODOT and Metro. Some of the things, obviously, like House Bill 2001, is not something that ODOT got heavily involved in, if at all. But the climate friendly equitable committee rulemaking, we didn't set those policies. We support, the governor's direction of having our agencies, our partner agencies, set those up. But we, through the OTC, have dedicated so far $15 million and hired 2, hopefully 4 staff people to directly support cities doing their transportation system plan updates. And that we expect to continue to grow that program. And so Teresa Conley, we have a person who's running that, who is identifying when we can support all the other all the cities in that work. You can always do a TSP on your own, but our plan is to fund them all. So it's not an unfunded mandate on cities. So that's where ODOT's coming in, because that is the transportation side of things, right? And then you probably familiar, we have the NEVI program, which is vehicle electrification. And, we're doing an electrification project with Tigard using a TGM funding to help that city, because you're very right. And there's different ages of original construction lend to different solutions for absolute sure.
Yeah, we're, as I mentioned before, we're at that nexus of trying to figure out how to coordinate all that, and it's conflicting, right? In terms of what we have, where we're at, and the rulings that are coming down. Anyways, I just wanted to bring it up and get your thoughts on that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, Chair,
We'll get these 3 questions in, and we have to give Tara some time here to do her Q&A.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest
Mayor
we're getting a little
Fitzgerald
behind
and Mayor
schedule.
Dolan.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments everybody has said. And regarding the Boone Bridge, we are talking about that a lot, of course. And one of the main areas of conversation is, would a gantry be put on the Boone Bridge? And those people who are part of the city of Wilsonville who live south of the river in Charbonneau are, of course, really wanting some assurances that they don't have to pay $2, $5, or whatever to go to the grocery store or go pick up their kids from daycare. So we're concerned about that. And then the other one, I did want to, and really we know that we understand there's not time to give us an answer. This isn't the time to find out, but it remains a time to be very curious and concerned about it. So equitably, we think that gantry, or there should be some coding put in so that if you're living within a city where there's a gantry in the middle of the city, you're somehow acknowledged and exempted from that. And then the other one, going in a little bit different direction, I wanted to know how things, if you could talk about the topic of the pedestrian and bike options that have been discussed with the Boone Bridge, which would connect tourism and travel routes, the wine country, all the way through. So basically the Ice Age Trail and Willamette Valley scenic routes could be connected if that bike ped option, the French, which we call the French Prairie Bridge, or even connected to the Boone Bridge replacement. Do you have any updates on that?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any specific updates. Looks like Matt may. I do know that because I'm not on that project team, but ODOT, we have the bike bill. So anything that we do, we have to look at the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. Currently, I've looked on Strava, which is a athlete's website that shows where people go, and there's definitely people use I-5 shoulder for cycling, so we're definitely aware of that. Probably walking too, and I'm a trail advocate, so I love that bridge idea as well. I've been on the Tonkin Ice Age Trail, I've been to Shimpui, all of that. So Matt, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think, Glenn, you're correct. We're very early in the stages of the project. It is being managed right now out of our UMO, Urban Mobility Office. The short answer is that we know that peds and bikes need to be addressed as part of this project. How specifically that's going to be done is still part of the early design process.
Thank you.
Mayor Delenn.
Hey, thanks. Maybe you can answer this one quickly, Glenn. Is Rose Quarter project, does it have a requirement for funding from the tolls also, or is that one not in the list of ones requiring toll funding?
I don't believe Rose Quarter, the way, I don't know. I don't think there's no connection with Rose Quarter that I'm aware of. As I mentioned, the program we're using right now tolls for a specific facility. And so it's like the gantry's there, the money's there to build the structure. The RMPP would be a different story, but that's not happening just yet, right? That Rose Quarter's already going. So that's, to the best of my knowledge, that's what I got.
Nope. Thanks for the clarification. And then I think the other part of that quick, maybe it's just as quick. How do you account for that we don't have toll rates right now in the budgetary part of it?
Well, that's the reason we don't have any budget for. On the 205 and
the other projects. Yeah.
No, I just got this is like really just happening now. Still, for the IBR bridge, we have a certain level of analysis that they've done. This is working with Metro's staff does the modeling, and I'm forgetting what level it is, but they have. It's more advanced than alternative C, but they have work they've done in the past. They're able to use for extrapolation. And then the same team is doing work on 205 and have come up with some ranges. So it's the details are within the Urban Mobility Office, but my understanding was they still fall a little bit short of covering the full things. Still need discretionary revenue to make them. And that's, there's gotta be some crazy math things there, right? Price of product too high, you get no customers. Too low, you don't do your job. So it's, yeah.
It's calculus. Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah. Thanks.
With that, I will move over to TriMet and give Tara the floor.
Great. Thanks, everyone. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, great. And thank you, Teresa, for pulling up slides. There we go. So there is in your packet, a list of TriMet RTP projects, which I'll also draw your attention to because I know we're short on time and have a lot to get through today. If you could maybe put it on slideshow mode, Teresa, that would be great. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, next slide. Appreciate that. So like Glenn, quick overview of some of the types of TriMet projects in the RTP. So capital projects such as high capacity transit projects, zero emission bus facilities, or all of our fleet replacement, both max vehicles and bus and lift vehicle replacement. We also have several different operations, maintenance, and asset management categories on our list, as well as some region-wide program buckets. So next slide. I'll go through and highlight some of the items on our that make up our revenue forecast and go through the project list and then specific to Washington County, as well as some changes I want to draw your attention to. So our revenue forecast really is all of our funds that we're putting towards the RTP. So we're including all capital funds as well as operating funds in our revenue forecast, which you'll see here the various things that make up our revenue sources. Next. And you'll see here the capital constrained cost targets for TriMet. I wanted to just highlight because these numbers are not very big to deliver large projects, especially high capacity transit projects, when these capital cost targets also need to cover the costs of just replacing our fleet on the regular time frame. And so these numbers for capital cost targets in short term and long term are smaller than they would be if we had included many of the high capacity transit projects in our vision in that list. So now I'll go through some of our projects to highlight for you all, and then we can talk through Washington County. So in the short term, so from 2024 to 2030, we have a few high capacity transit projects included. First of all, Better Red, which includes improvements in Washington County, is underway, under construction right now. So the amount to be completed remains on our list. And we've included both 82nd Avenue and TB Highway as placeholder high capacity transit projects. Obviously, there are transit planning projects in the works. For the purposes of the RTP, we are converting both of those projects from ETC, Enhanced Transit Corridor, existing RTP projects, to HCT projects, with the assumption that both of those are small starts projects, and that we're partnering with many of you on TB Highway. The Montgomery Park Streetcar project, just calling attention to that, was on TriMet's list in the past and will continue on our list, but the match is funded and supported by the city of Portland. And then IBR is its own full project, which now incorporates the high capacity transit element in that project as well. So that HCT project is no longer on our list, but incorporated into the broader IBR project. And then we did, in the past, TriMet had a number of ETC, transit priority corridors, now known as the Better Bus program, on the RTP list. We now, through the STIF process, have a program of STIF for Better Bus improvements. And so we are including a new bucket on our list for ETC, transit priority corridors, which we estimate to be about $27.5 million in the short term. And we'll be working with you all as partners to prioritize where some of those improvements may go. And I really appreciate Washington County working to incorporate transit priority into various frequent service bus corridor descriptions, so that we might be able to allocate some of those funds to future corridors. And then for future HCT projects, some of the main changes to our list here: in the past, in 2018, the entirety of Southwest Corridor had been included in the constrained RTP list. A lot has changed since then, but we, in talking with partners and continuing the discussion through the HCT strategy update, really do continue to hear that Southwest Corridor is a priority, and we need to signal that. And so we are continuing to put in the short term, between 2024 and 2030, a project development project for Southwest Corridor to continue to work on the project and refine the project. And then in the out years after 2031, we've identified some additional reasonably expected funds to be able to include engineering and right-of-way in the project list. Though we've moved construction to the strategic, we've heard from many of you how important that remains. And we will be talking today about what that commitment might look like from Washington County, because this is getting high capacity transit projects on the list is we need to make sure to be able to point to other partnerships to be able to do that. As in our history as a region to deliver high capacity transit projects, we need to do that in partnership with the region. And so we can talk more about that in a moment. Mayor Serrato, quick question.
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I just don't know. What is an ROW?
Oh, right of way.
That's what I thought.
Sorry, lost.
Okay,
Sorry for the acronyms.
So then my question is, on the Southwest Corridor, if you're looking for right of way after 2031, that's 8 years out.
Mm-hmm.
So are you realistically telling us then that the Southwest Corridor, for all intents and purposes, is probably 15 plus years away if it happens?
I think that's a bigger question, but for the purposes of the RTP, in terms of being able to point to when future revenues may be available, we are putting it after 2031. So I think there's more discussions to be had about what could happen if there's additional revenue and new revenues that come to the table. And that's part of why we're committed to keeping this project on the list, though the majority of the investment comes later, because it is a very large project, and we know that it's not the type of project that we can just cobble together the funds from small investments from other partners, as we may have in years past, but that it is important to signal both to the region and to the FTA that it remains a priority. So we can get into some more details on that shortly, but yes, that's what we mean by right of way, that it would be for the purpose of the RTP after 2031 this time. Other future high capacity transit projects in the long term that we are pointing to on our list, the Steel Bridge Transit Bottleneck, which was on our list in 2018. Since that time, we did some additional analysis, which many of you may recall, on the Max Tunnel study in advance of the 2020 funding measure, to really look at what the needs of the capacity on the steel bridge for transit were. And so we are keeping the PD, meaning project development, for that study on TriMet's list, but the construction would be moved to the strategic, because again, we would need a new large funding source to make a project like that happen. And then lastly, I know that we've talked through the high capacity transit strategy update with WCCC several times. The tier 2 high capacity transit corridors that were part of that process, we've identified some future funds to point to project development for planning for a future FX or BRT line, but are not identifying which corridors at this time. We're just including a bucket of project development for future high capacity transit, and then including the rest in the strategic list, which you'll see in the packet. Next slide. Okay, and then also, and that's just part one of our constrained capital projects. We also need to include improvements to any of our bus facilities and zero emission bus projects to upgrade our fleet. So all of these 4 bus bases, Columbia, Merlot, Powell, and Center, were all in the last RTP. And we have split several of these into phases, recognizing that the improvements for zero emission bus infrastructure, as well as upgrading some of these facilities to accommodate larger vehicles like articulated buses for a future BRT line, will come in phases. And so we've split these bus facilities into phases, both in the short term and long term, to be able to make the necessary and more expensive improvements. And then, as I was saying earlier, our fleet replacement, some of our MAX trains are getting quite old, and our capital constrained forecast needs to cover the entirety of replacing all our existing fleet between now and 2045. And so the cost of vehicles has been going up. That is a larger segment of our project costs. And then I won't go through each of the new federal earmark and grant projects that we're adding to our list. You can see some of those in the attachment we included, but as Glenn said, we need to ensure that any federal earmarks we're requesting funds for are called out in the RTP. And then we have some small, some new and some existing buckets for capital projects. And one new bucket that we're creating is for transit centers and layovers, to be able to point to that as an opportunity for improvements for future transit centers, as we're currently doing for Beaverton. We're also adding our own transit-oriented development category. Metro has historically had one. TriMet has our own transit-oriented development program, as well as leaving our other capital project buckets. Next slide. And so a few things to highlight for Washington County. One new project, the Beaverton Transit Center, which we've talked about before. We're currently in design for improving the facility to add operator bake facilities, expansion for service expansion. And then we're also pursuing funding for zero emission bus charging at Beaverton Transit Center. As I said earlier, the TV Highway Transit Project will be replacing the ETC project on TriMet's list, and then several new buckets on TriMet's list to point to. We are also including the pass-through funds for the regional coordination shuttles that are distributed to the region, since those were included as pass-through funds on TriMet's revenue forecast. And then some other changes to be aware of. As I said earlier, Merlot, our bus facility, we are expanding the scale and scope of the improvements at that facility to expand service and zero emission bus charging at the facility. And then for Southwest Corridor, we are moving construction to the strategic, but with support and from partners in contributing to Southwest Corridor project development, engineering, and right-of-way. We think there's capacity to continue to leave project development, engineering, and right-of-way on the constrained list. And then the tier 2 high capacity transit corridors in Washington County that are on the strategic list, Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and 185th. And then we are proposing to remove the West double tracking project and frequency upgrades from the frequency upgrades and double tracking projects from our strategic list, because we are using the HCT tiering to identify our future strategic projects. And by carrying Southwest Corridor, Max Tunnel, the future BRT projects, as well as the needs for us to have an additional bus space to expand service, we don't think there's the capacity to continue to include all tiering in the HCT strategy on our strategic list. So we are drawing the line at tier 2 for those projects. And then next slide. So just some of the main takeaways. As our system has grown, we have more needs for asset management, state of good repair, and fleet replacement. And so those are taking up a larger part of our project list. We're continuing to reflect the tier 1 high capacity transit projects from the HCT strategy as the priorities for the region and for TriMet, hence wanting to continue to include as much of Southwest Corridor as we thought could be accommodated in the constrained list. And that in order to deliver future HCT projects, any of the tier 2 projects or Southwest Corridor, as well as some of the other tier 1 projects, we really need more local match to point to and new revenue sources to deliver big projects. And we're missing out on a lot of opportunity for federal match without that. And so that is why the TriMet's constrained project list is perhaps a bit smaller than in other RTPs, but we're optimistic to be able to keep working with you all on identifying local match opportunities to make some of these projects happen. Okay. I'm sure there are lots of questions. I think this is the last slide. Go ahead.
All right, questions for Tara?
Mayor Callaway.
Thank you. I'll just get us started. Thank you. First of all, good report, good information. As I think about kind of partnering or pairing up ODOT and TriMet that they're putting in on Highway 26, and thinking, of what Doug Kelsey always used to say, the best way to get people out of their cars and into TriMet, whether it be Max or buses, is for them to be stuck in traffic and watching, TriMet moving. And so if there's a way, or what can we do to make sure that as ODOT increases, operational efficiency on 26, that we're also adding, bus on the shoulder, the bus rapid transit, all of which then provide, from Sunset Transit Center, just those single seat trips from that point out to the employment centers in Beaverton or Hillsborough. Because to me, that seems like it's low hanging fruit. And yes, money doesn't grow on trees. So I get it's not that kind of fruit, but it still seems like somewhat easy projects to grab and implement.
I believe that on the Washington County project list, that Cornell is highlighted as a corridor, and that it does reference potential for transit priority improvements. Though we don't have the Highway 26 corridor or Cornell on our specific transit corridor lists. Right now we are, and I should say that our budget does reflect the full implementation of Forward Together, and that our operations costs do cover that, as well as a slight service increase here in terms of frequencies. But in terms of a future BRT project, we do think we need to conduct additional analysis to really prioritize which corridors come next, and are in our project list, really giving preference to those tier 1 projects to point to find funds for. Does that help address your question, Mayor?
It does, thank you. And you know, the tier 1 projects lead to tier 2 and 3 rolling down my cheek. Thank you.
That's Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair Bobinick. A couple questions. One, and this gets back to Mayor Callaway's question, I guess. I mean, surely TriMet has a list of potential candidates for BRT. I mean, you may not have, I understand you have to do additional analysis, and I can think of 4 or 5 candidates that are potential candidates. I don't know which ones would work the best. So how big is that candidate list? And then a second one is, considering you're putting off Southwest Corridor, which is of concern to my district and to Mayor Sherrod, as well as Mayor Lube, are you looking, or if I remember correctly, it was sort of a fairly close call when it came to spending money now or spending money later on the Southwest Corridor, and one of the things was BRT on Barber Boulevard. Is that something that's being reevaluated at this point in time?
Well, first of all, I would say that it's not that TriMet is putting off Southwest Corridor, but really there is a need for regional partnership to move that forward. And there is not reasonably expected local revenues or TriMet revenues to be able to move that forward in a significant way in the short term. We are putting a small bucket towards project development in the short term to continue to refine that, but we need a new revenue source to be able to really carry that project forward. And so it's an important signal to put some funds in the short term towards that, but we do think there's that we do, but we have a record of decision from the FTA for the project. And so if we want to keep that record of decision for the project that was underway, then we need to continue to refine that project itself. And so if we were to consider whether BRT is a different solution to consider, then correct me if I am wrong to anyone else on the phone, but I believe we are kind of going back to the drawing board with that process. So I think there are certainly other considerations we can make to continue to refine that. But what we're proposing doing here is really just to put some of our funds and looking to partners to make commitments to keep the needs identified on this corridor alive as a project in the RTP and signal that to the FTA. So we're looking for the support of Washington County to point to some funds on your project list as well to be able to signal this is still an important corridor priority for Washington County.
Okay.
Does that help?
And you mentioned West, and there's been some discussion of adding some additional stops on West to make it a little more practical, particularly in the Beaverton area. And I'm wondering, so when you note that you've dropped a double trackage proposals and enhanced service, you dropped was there any consideration of additional stops?
I believe that's a separate project. If there were additional stops to be built, the project that we had on the strategic list, I believe, came out of the last RTP in conversations with this committee. I am new to this table, as you all know, in TriMet, but to really point to investments that could be made in West. So we're proposing removing a project for double tracking, and which would be required for frequencies of more than 30 minutes. Because that also would include buying more trains and double tracking, which is a significant project that is more than TriMet is planning to point to at this point in time. I'd say we're certainly continue to be open to other partnerships and ways to make WES work better for you all, and open to the conversation. And we are adding, as I believe you all know, adding service in the WES area, adding bus service as part of Forward Together in the near term as well. So we are improving other transit service in that general vicinity.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Bosner.
Hi, Tara. Thank you so much for the presentation. I also want to thank your agency. We just had a chance to meet John Sarah, who's brand new government affairs. It's going to be focused on cities in the metro area. So he came out to Sherwood, so it was great seeing him, and we appreciate you guys ramping up efforts on the government affairs side. So thank you. I won't go into my normal talk about where we need buses going, but you've all heard that before. But I do have a question. There's some proposed route changes for 2023, 2024, and our community's been getting a lot of cards. I don't know if they're coming in the mail or email or how they're getting them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a place we can get more detail? Because they're very vague. It just says more hours of the day, you know, and for instance, bus 94, route 94, that route doesn't go where our citizens need, and they're talking about adding service, and those buses are empty most of the time. By the way, if you want to save money, there's something to look at. But is there a place we can go to get more detail on that and what's exactly those proposed changes are? Because it's pretty vague in the materials going out.
I know we've been accepting public comment on the proposed service changes for beginning in fall of this year. We're in the process of accepting comments, and I believe they would be the changes implemented as part of Forward Together. So we're kind of phasing those in year by year. But I think it should be under trimet.org/service. If one of the other TriMet folks listening in right now chats me a different link, I will tell it.
Yeah, I'm on the site.
Questions.
I'm on the site right now. It's just one sentence. New buses arriving every 20 minutes for more hours of the day. That's all it says on the.
That sounds like it is possibly increasing frequency and span, but I don't want to speak without having that particular route.
And I don't want to chew this meeting up. If you can just point me offline where we can get that.
I will. We'll follow up with that right away. And I will just emphasize that our RTP list covers the improvements under Forward Together and our asset management and state of good repair needs first. And then some slight service increases after that, though perhaps not as high as the region might like to see. And so we're really looking to balance putting some of those future project development engineering for future high capacity transit projects on our list, while balancing the need to increase bus service in communities across the region, which we've heard from you all.
All right. Thank you, Tara. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks, Tara and Glenn, for your presentations and the Q&A. We got to move things along because we got two meaty subjects to still cover, and we're down to 50 minutes. So I'm going to flip back in the agenda, and Erin Wardell is going to present the Washington County 2023 RTP Project List. This project list is for our approval to then forward on to the county commissioners for their approval. So I'll turn this over to Erin and her team, and I expect to hear something from County Commissioner Rogers about a proposed amendment to this. Erin.
Thank you, Mayor Bubenick. Our presentation today actually involves a couple of other staff as well. Washington County has a really important role with the Regional Transportation Plan in that, in addition to compiling our own list as a jurisdiction, as all of the cities do, we also coordinate the project list from our city partners within Washington County, as well as THPRD, and we work closely with our partners at ODOT and TriMet. So it takes a number of staff to do that. We have Julie Sosnowski as our expert on the project lists overall. We have Steve Kelly, who is our expert on our revenue forecast, and he coordinates really closely with all of our partners to put that together. And then Jessica Pels has been our overall coordinator this year on pulling together our city partners. So Jessica is actually going to take over at this point and walk us through our process slides. There are several steps, I should say, in the process of approving the RTP project list. Each of your jurisdictions is responsible for approving your own. The county will approve the county's list, and then WCCC will be making this overall recommendation today on the bundle of projects for Washington County. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica. And it looks like we've got our correct presentation up now.
Great, thank you. I'm trying to start my video. For some reason, my video doesn't want to start, but I could just talk with that.
Yeah, we see you now.
We can see you.
Oh, you can see me? I can't see myself. Oh, there I am. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Okay, as Erin said, the purpose of today's presentation is to seek your review and action on endorsement of our proposed 2023 Regional Transportation Plan countywide project list for purposes of Metro's evaluation. We also want to identify next steps and opportunities for engagement. Now, just to make a note that we have over 250 projects on our countywide project list, so we will not be going through the list in any kind of detail. This is more a background about what is the RTP and the purpose of it. And I know many of you have been living and breathing this with your staff, so this may not be new to you, but we do have some people on here who don't live and breathe it, and so we thought it would be a good process overview. Next slide. To do a quick presentation overview, we'll do a summary of what the RTP is and why it's important, how we arrived at a countywide revenue forecast, the coordination that we did with cities and agencies, next steps, and then we'll have some time for the action. So what is the RTP and why is it important? The Regional Transportation Plan guides long-range planning and investments for all forms of travel within the metro area, including vehicles, transit, biking and walking, and freight. A really important part of it is that projects have to be in the RTP to be eligible for metro, state, and federal funds. This is a huge process. It requires JPAC and MPAC recommendations to Metro Council per federal and state requirements, and it has to be updated every 5 years. So this process will continue in another 5 years and probably be just as robust and interesting. Sorry, Teresa. The important thing here, the timeline is really quick on this RTP. It has to be adopted by December 6, 2023 per federal guidelines. So to kick off the RTP update, we first figure out how much revenue we have anticipated over the planning horizon. So each jurisdiction and agency forecasts their own revenue, and then we aggregate it into a countywide revenue. There are some typical revenue sources, including transportation development tax that is specific to Washington County. And then there are other sources such as system development charges, fuel taxes, vehicle registration fees, other programs generating revenue from the state that are applied to transportation capital improvements. And then we apply growth factor to each expected source of revenue to estimate the financial capacity for the two funding buckets. And I'll talk about those buckets a little bit more. And it's really important to note that these revenue forecasts are not guarantees of funding for any of the projects. It's really just seeing what kind of capacity we might have in the future and what projects we could potentially get done if we had all this funding come available to us. So once we aggregate it all, we have two buckets, a near term and a late term financially constrained. So these totals represent what we anticipate for our countywide buckets of near term and late term. It's important to note that operations and maintenance revenues are also estimated, and that's to ensure that all revenue is not being directed to projects, but they're keeping back some revenue to account for operations and maintenance. In addition to these two near-term buckets, or the two financially constrained buckets, there is also a strategic project list bucket, and that represents project priorities that are still priorities for the region, but that don't fit within the financially constrained outlook. Next slide. So once we have the financial revenue sorted out, then everyone figures out their project priorities. So each metro county has to coordinate on a county-wide project list that meets the expected revenue projections. To do that, each jurisdiction and then the agencies, as we just heard from ODOT and TriMet, and then we also worked closely with THPRD to identify capital project priorities through 2045 and then prioritize those projects into those buckets that I just talked about. So the near term are the highest priority projects that are most likely to have funding within the 2023 to 2030 timeframe. The long-term financially constrained priorities are high priority projects that are more likely to be funded after 2031. And then again, strategic priorities are still priorities, but they don't fit within the financially constrained revenue forecast. But they're important to have on the list because if funding becomes available that is in addition to the anticipated revenue, they can be moved onto the financially constrained list. There are some eligibility criteria for projects in the RTP, including that projects need to be included in an adopted plan that has gone through a public process. They need to cost at least $2 million or be in a bucket of projects that cost at least $2 million. And they need to be located on one of the designated regional systems within the metro planning area. This map on the right shows what the network looks like, and that is composed of the motor vehicle network, bike network, transit network, and freight network. Once projects are identified and once you as a body endorse the countywide project list, then staff will enter the projects into Metro's RTP project submission hub. And then Metro staff will evaluate how well the proposed projects support RTP goals and help the overall transportation system. To get to our countywide project list, we did a lot of coordination with all of your staffs. We first started with the revenue forecast. We coordinated with all your staff and with THPRD and Metro to develop the countywide revenue forecast. Then we facilitated a series of 5 coordinating meetings starting in October 2022 to work on the countywide project list and answer questions and just coordinate with each other. And we also had one-on-one meetings as needed throughout this whole process over the last few months. But the end result is a comprehensive list that meets the anticipated revenue forecast. So the next steps, you can see we are at February 13th here. On February 2nd, the WCCC TAC recommended that WCCC endorse the Washington County 2023 RTP project list. And it's a very tight turnaround to when the Metro Project Submission Hub closes on February 17th. So that deadline is when all the projects need to be entered. So we will be hard at work at that over the next few days. In the spring, Metro staff will be evaluating the projects against the RTP goals for public comment. And the 5 goals paraphrased here are equity, climate, safety, mobility, and economy. On May 24th is the deadline for local jurisdictions to have their councils and elected bodies provide a letter of support for the local project list. And then in summer, JPAC and Metro Council will be doing review. There will be a public engagement period on the draft RTP. And then in the fall, the final RTP draft will be coming for adoption to Metro Council. Throughout this process, there will also be some time for commenting on the proposed policies that have come before this body as well, when we had all those RTP policy workshops a few months ago. those will be part of the draft RTP. Okay, next slide. Before we move to the action, do WCCC members have any questions about the proposed countywide 2023 RTP project list?
Can you stop the PowerPoint so we can see each other? I think Mayor Rosner's hands up from last time. All right.
That is correct.
All right. Questions for Jessica? Quiet room. All right. Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I'll raise a question. I noticed there's nothing or very little in there regarding the TV highway BRT and nothing regarding support for the Southwest Corridor. Can you give me some thinking about why that is?
Yes, actually, I think that is going to come up now with our, I think maybe I'll direct it to Chris or Stephen or Commissioner Rogers to address that.
I think Stephen, you want to introduce Commissioner Rogers? Jessica, can you share your screen again? And
Yeah.
or is Teresa?
Yeah, Teresa.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenthal. So yes, we do actually have a bucket in the project list that includes potential matching funds for a TV highway bus rapid transit. At this point, as you know, there's not a locally preferred alternative. We're still in the midst of a planning process there, but there is what I would call a bucket funding allocation for safety improvements and or regional match for BRT on TV highway that's included in the list. And then we have just been working over the weekend actually to propose an amendment to the project list that Commissioner Rogers was actually going to put forward here in just a few minutes too, regarding Southwest Corridor.
No, the new one. No, the new one.
So bear with us. I think we actually have the text of the amendment, but Commissioner, if you want to go ahead and maybe introduce the proposed amendment, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand you've been briefed a bit about what we're proposing. Good to see, first of all, so many old friends and people I've worked with over the years. And I am the alternate to the alternate. We have 4 of our board members on the East Coast right now to a conference, and I'm the one in town, and they asked if I would cover this meeting, and I was delighted to do that on their behalf. The amendment we're going to have is going to be to move some monies around, because you understand that on any of these RTPs that we're somewhat constrained about adding projects and doing things with their total dollars, but we're going to propose some money moved around, and I'll identify that in a minute. But I think maybe some context might be important. Back several years ago, there were several of the folks, now I guess there's not too many of us left, who are working on that Southwest Corridor project. Most of the cities on the east side of the county were working, and Dick Scouten, who was on the commission with me at that time, we had pledged through the county agreement $75 million as our share to get the Southwest Corridor done. As you know, there wasn't enough funding that was ultimately found. There was a project that was proposed through a region-wide levy that failed, and so we're back to square one in regard to the Southwest Corridor. We don't like coming at the last minute, but what I got was a contact on Saturday. Our staff at the county got a contact on Friday night. This comes from TriMet as well as Metro, indicating that they were going to propose some operations money. This is TriMet going towards the Southwest Corridor to do some additional right-of-way work and try to advance this project. And you can say, well, why is all of this important? Because if you don't get on the list, you're not going to be on the list for a long time. And to Tim's point, Tim, I wanted to mention to you, these lists have to be done, and they're through 2045, as you can tell. And so any city who hasn't got some projects on this list is going to be wondering for a good number of years why they didn't get on the list. So yeah, that's kind of segue. But in this particular proposal, we were asked, Washington County, if we couldn't find some dollars, roughly $15 million, and you can see it there, to move to the area of the Southwest Corridor to allow TriMet as well as Metro to continue working on this project. Keep it on the constrained list. If it's not there, we can't ask for federal funding. For those of you who've been around for any length of time, you know how popular this project is in many, many quarters. There's detractors as well. I understand. I mean, not everybody's in agreement, but very popular as far as completing the regional system. And so what we're proposing, as you can see in front of you, is if we move roughly 15 million, it's 14.7, if you want to count the dollars, from three particular projects. So those are projects 11,739, 10,560, and 10,545. And what they are is it's some money for Hall Boulevard, Locust to Olson, some Farmington Road, 170th to 209th, and some Beaverton Highway Olson Road project. At least any of you, including me, who said, well, wait a minute, in my particular district, there is one on Hall, think that those aren't going to be done. That's not the case. We're just reducing the amount of the ask. The ask will still be there. We'll still seek other dollars, and you have other means of trying to fund those in the future. So we, Mr. Chairman, we would respectfully recommend that this amendment be considered to remove $15 million, 14.7 to be exact, to the Southwest Corridor to complement proposals you'll be hearing probably again from Washington County and one from TriMet, and I suspect from Metro.
And Commissioner, if I could, I want to just clarify a late breaking change in our proposal as of this morning was we actually identified that we had a little bit of unallocated revenue within our headroom. So we actually are not proposing to reduce allocations on other projects. We found just enough space to add this additional project without shifting any funds.
Well, that's even better. Yeah, again, to the group, I'm sorry we're kind of stumbling a bit here, but everything's happening in real time, very real time. So that's good news.
Yep, thank you.
I don't know your procedure, Mr. Chairman, but if you want a motion for the list, or first, and then you want us to make the a motion to consider this amendment, we'd be happy to do that, but we'll leave it in your very capable hands.
All right, Commissioner. I see some hands up. So Councilor Rosenthal, is your hand just still up? You have another question?
Mm-hmm. No.
All right. Tara.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to quickly chime in and thank you all for making this change and amendment, and apologize for the late notice, and just to continue to clarify that this is really an important signal to keep the project alive and to show that it remains a priority both in the short term and the long term, and that we all need to continue to work together to figure out the full funding opportunity for the project. But that this, when we had spoke to you before and in prior months, we had said we think we need to move the entirety of the project to the strategic. It's staying on the strategic, but in working closely with Metro and looking at future revenues, we agreed that there could be some capacity to keep through right of way on the list, with being able to point to commitments from partners such as these. And I know the city of Portland is planning to point to some of their constrained funds to go towards project development engineering as well. So just wanted to reflect that, and thank you all. And I don't, if there's any other questions, happy to answer them, but thank you.
Mayor Beatty.
I have a couple questions. It's hard to digest this in real time. I'm trying to work with staff to make sure I fully understand what is being said and asked here today. I don't disagree that this is a regional priority, even though, but are you saying that the money was found for the near term or the long term? Like, finding $2 million seems reasonable to me, but saying there's $14 million of money no one accounted for that can instantly pop up makes me wonder, was there money being held back from all of our regional considerations for the projects?
Yeah, I can answer that, I think, Mayor Beatty, and that is, if you look in your packet, there is a colorful chart of red and green numbers. And you'll see on the bottom line, there is some margins where not everything came out perfectly balanced. And we figured this is the opportunity to fully allocate our revenue forecast and spare us from shaving off the other projects. And I also just want to point out that this did come at the last minute. I know we're all working, sort of struggling to figure out how we have an RTP without the Southwest Corridor in it, given its importance, particularly in light of the tolling work coming ahead and everything. So this is a really important step. And TriMet's action on Friday to add this really made it possible for us to jump in and support it. And it is our hope that by May, when all the boards and councils have the opportunity to refine the list, that we can have made some more progress on a financial strategy to flesh this out more. While we can't add projects later, we can move them around in priorities and adjust some funding. So this isn't the end, but this holds it and keeps it in the regional transportation plan. And I just have to say that we have been through a pretty tough last 3 years where nobody really had the capacity to do a lot of strategic planning, given what we've been through with even trying to find bus drivers for TriMet and our own cost escalation. So this is a step to keep it in there. It doesn't affect it, it is the leftovers on the bottom of that chart that's in front of you. And we know that there will continue to be revisions as this moves forward in the next few months in terms of as people sharpen their pencils a bit.
I am in agreement that I believe that this signals importance into the Southwest Corridor mayors. I wholeheartedly support it. I guess my concern is if in the last minute we can find $14 million of capacity, I just want to know, like, internally, why was it held back? Was it for projects overrun? And then how do we make sure that other projects on the list don't get shortchanged?
We didn't reduce anything else on the projects, and I think we do have staff here, but your staff submitted everything, and that you can see it included in the lists. And the list was approved by the WCCC TAC on February 2nd. And in fact, there were some amendments made at that time to kind of round out everyone's requests. So the staff have been really working hard on this from all the cities.
All right. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair Bubenik. I just want to clarify so that the proposed amendment now is to add 2 projects for $2 million and $12.7 million to the RTP list, but that does not include subtractions from any other projects, as was originally mentioned. In other words, it's from previously unallocated funds. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I only can see a handful of heads. So with that, I don't know if we need to have 2 motions. One to make the amendment to what was presented by Erin and her team, and then to approve the whole package or endorse the whole package. So I'll go with the first thing, with the first question of, is there a motion and a second to make the amendment as requested by Washington County Commissioner Rogers?
So moved.
Take off the slide so we can see each other.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I saw Mayor Shirato reach into his camera there, so.
You can give it to Gary. Go ahead.
All right. So I have a
Thank you,
motion
Jim.
and a second to accept the amendment to the RTP for Washington County. Any discussions on those motions? All in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, I see Mary Fitzgerald abstained. All right. So now the amendment is approved. How about a discussion or any motions on the recommending the RTP to the Washington County Commissioners?
I'll make
Or
a motion to recommend the revised RTP.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to endorse the revised RTP for Washington County. Any discussions on those motions? Mayor Fitzgerald.
I just wanted to express my strong support for this project. I'm abstaining so that I don't vote twice, but I'm very supportive. I'm voting with Clackamas County.
All right, thank you, Mayor Fitzgerald.
Can I, Frank, if I could say
Sure.
one thing else, and
Sure.
that would just be for general comment, nothing on the motion, but I'm disappointed that the double tracking and the work on the commuter line is not going to go forward. I know your city as well as Tigard, King City, Beaverton, all worked very hard. Durham, Gary was there for all of the meetings. Sherwood actually financed a lot of the original to get that moving. So it's just disappointing to see that that's not continuing on, because that is the way from Wilsonville to Beaverton. I mean, that is for many people. So I felt compelled to say that.
All right, Mayor Beatty.
Well, I'm not going to leave Commissioner Rogers out there hanging, because I feel the same way about this project, and I've brought it up quite a bit, and particularly with Beaverton, as it sits in one of our few industrial work areas. The need to either do something with this to get more ridership or get it out of the way is incredibly important to us. I mean, it literally goes through my city and creates a lot of havoc for a slow moving train. So I know it's not an issue we're going to solve with this plan, but when we're talking about long-term planning and it's not on the list, it's worrisome.
People flashing by quickly. Councilor Rosenthal.
Well, I just have to say that I support the comments from Commissioner Rogers and Mayor Beatty, that I think it's unfortunate this leads a long-term connection, not just to Wilsonville, but also potentially to Salem. And I think that this is something that I hate to see it move off, but that's just a comment.
Okay. Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce that the city of Wilsonville has introduced a bill that is getting pretty good support to study extending west to Salem. So the idea that brought up today is important, and extending it, just need to figure out how to make it work, and can it do a lot more for us? So thank you.
Okay. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make one quick clarification in terms of the vote today. We're really not making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners here. This really is WCCC endorsing the project list as an entity, the coordinating committee entity. And then in May, I believe each commission and council will be asked to endorse specifically the projects that they're sponsoring on the RTP list. So I did want to just make that clarification. So we're really making a recommendation to Metro today.
Okay. I need to move this along because we got MSTIP coming going. Is anything?
I just wanted to say, hear your concerns. Happy to continue working with you. We're spending a lot of time looking into WES, and just to point out one note as we continue this conversation, that when WES did first start its service and when that planning did come together, it was projected there would be roughly 4,000 riders per day. At this point in time, due to planned development around the station areas, and we're really closer to between 400 and 500. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue looking at what can be done to build ridership in that area in the interim before considering another very large investment. So happy to keep working with you all and move on the agenda.
All right. So with that was our discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote on our endorsement / recommendation of this list to Metro. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Mayor Fitzgerald, and see you again. All right. Stephen, I think you're up next. I don't know how much time, if you could have enough time to do the MSTIP update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we are way behind schedule, so I might, if it's okay, I might just say very quickly, there's a presentation, some materials that were presented to the Board of Commissioners last Tuesday that I believe we linked to in your WCCC packet. So I really wanted to just walk through and essentially share that same information with all of you for an update. And I think the key takeaways that I'll just share maybe very briefly were that we continue working through our committed projects, our MSTIP 3D, 3E, and bonding cost sharing projects. As we've been going through those projects, which were approved in 2012, 2015, and 2016 by the Board of Commissioners, cost escalation, like everybody else, is really impacting these projects. So we've identified that as we're looking to complete our committed, what we call our pay-as-you-go program projects, the 3D and 3E projects, we have a shortage of around $70 million at this point between the initial project estimates from 2012, 2015, 2016, and our estimated cost to complete the remaining projects at this point. So what we outlined in our briefing presentation were some of the strategies that we're proposing for how to sort of manage through that. And that may be a combination of looking at where there are opportunities. Can we potentially revisit the scope of the project, maybe down scope a project a little bit? Are there projects that can be potentially shifted a little bit further out into the future? And that may be a 1 year, potentially a 2 year delay. And then I think there's noted in the presentation the general fund at the county. You've all heard about it through other forums, but there are some structural challenges in the general fund here at the county. So we are anticipating that we'll be asked to take a 4, 7, or 10% reduction in the MSTIP transfer for the fiscal year 23-24 budget. And then we're starting to take a look and think more strategically about the longer term future of the program. How do we continue to fund or finance important transportation improvements across the county? So not a lot to share at this point other than to say that we're starting to take a look at that, think about it. And I would welcome obviously any comments or questions that you have. We can take offline or maybe just a few here very quickly, and then that we'll just be reaching out and chatting with staff at the cities about some of the more specific potential adjustments to projects that we may want to chat about with you going forward. So that's it in a very quick nutshell. And I see Mayor Rosner has a hand up.
Yep. So we got about maybe 3 minutes for questions for Stephen, and then we have to move on.
You know, Stephen, I can just reach out to you separately. I'll save time for someone else.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Right. That'll bring us to the GPAC agenda review by Mayor Callaway.
Thank you very much. So we'll be voting on the MTIP amendment and as well as a preferred alternative for the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge. And I'm just hoping that the alternative is not an earthquake not ready Burnside Bridge. There are a couple of information items. One is the RTP call for projects, and this will be phase 4 in our public engagement. And then an update on the CFEC and climate smart, so basically how climate smart relates to the regional transportation plan, and takeaways from the climate workshop with JPAC and council in November, and then an update on Metro's implementation of CFEC rules. And so that is pretty much what's planned for this Thursday morning at 7:30, virtually or in person there at Metro headquarters.
All right. Chris or Mike McCarthy, have anything to add to Mayor Callaway's comments?
I would just add that the materials that are in the packet just show the extensive outreach that's going to occur in the review of all of the projects that you just approved, endorsed, I should say. So there will be a lot of people reviewing these lists, and I'm sure wanting to give lots of opinions about them.
All right. I'm not seeing anything from Mike. All right. Okay, that brings us to the MPAC agenda, where Tim will be attending his first meeting.
Yes, so that'll make this the shortest item on our agenda today, because I've not been to a meeting and I just checked. They don't even have an agenda posted yet, so more to come.
All right. So we made up a little bit of time. I'm not opposed to ending a little early. Anything good for the order or other business we need to cover today?
Chair, we did want to just share, we had a few agency updates that were listed in there, and I did want to just take a second to call out that we were successful in receiving a Safe Streets for All grant award program, working with Metro, and so we're very excited about that. And specifically for Washington County, we'll be using funds to update our traffic safety action plan to make it compliant with some of the newer federal requirements for those plans, and that would make us eligible for additional federal funds through the Safe Streets for All program for some implementation funds. But we really appreciate the partnership with Metro and a couple of our other cities too. And I think either Erin or Chris could speak a little bit more to that if there's any questions or comments on that.
Chris and Erin?
I would suggest that we come back and spend more time on this when we work up through the agreement that we have with Metro. We're a sub-consultant, we're a subcontractor that Metro on this, as all cities had to be to submit. So unless Erin has it all figured out already, I think it'd be best for us to come back.
It'll be a really interesting future topic because City of Tigard also received funding, and so the county and Tigard and Metro could all come in and talk about what we're going to do.
Yeah. Multnomah County and 3 cities also are a sub to, it's not very exactly a sub-consultant, it's that we had to have a coordinated application to make FHWA happy.
All right. And then Mayor Lube, did you attend your first RTAC? I'm sorry, I'm RTAC. Your Region 1 ACT meeting yet, or is that coming up?
Yes, no, I attended it.
All right. Anything super interesting or?
Nothing really to highlight or make note of. We approved a bunch of projects for funding, and all of the projects move forward. It looks like there's a good chance of them being funded. So that's the update.
All right. Then finally, with the last few minutes on the RTAC side, there's super frustration with the members of the RTAC on the RMPP forecast, the revenue forecast, as we kind of heard today from ODOT, that no revenue forecasts are forthcome and being presented to the RTAC. And then the discussion of, okay, how are you going to allocate these revenues? So that is supposed to be coming this month, that we'll start getting these answers from ODOT on revenue projections, how they're going to spend them, how they're going to, spend money on diversion. And we'll also hopefully finally get to approve our charter. We've had 4 meetings now, and we still haven't approved a charter because it keeps getting tweaked a bit. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing, how the financing of this and how, they're going to deal with diversion. Because at the last meeting, there's quite a debate about, how much does it cost to run the tolls, and what's the percentage of the revenue that's going to be allocated to that. We had the federal highway folks saying, it runs about 5% to administer a toll program, whereas we've heard from Washington State, they say somewhere between 35 to 40% to run a tolling program. So it's going to be all about the money and about projects and how they're going to roll this out for the next few months at RTAC. But I'll keep you up to date. But so far, not a lot of information has been given out, lots and lots of questions. And I'm looking forward to the commitment from ODOT that they're going to start answering our questions here over the next few months. And with that, anything else?
I do.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Just that the last thing on the other business list was that the Metro's development of their high capacity transit strategy is out for public comment right now. And I know this topic has been in front of you a couple times now, and you had a lot of opinions about it, including that 99W should be a higher priority, that there need to be more services, that West shouldn't be tier 4 or fallen off. There, you had a lot of comments, so I would encourage you to take a look at that and jump in that public comment period. And again, as Tara indicated, One of the reasons we're just a little bit out of sync because the high capacity transit priorities haven't been developed yet other than the tier ones. So those 2, 3, and 4s are all in play.
Okay.
So just to draw that to your attention.
Mayor Callaway.
I was just gonna wish everybody happy Valentine's Day and tell you, you're just a big bunch of beautiful sweethearts to work with. Thank you.
Right. Mayor Beatty.
Well, I'm just processing Mayor Callaway's point there, but yes, happy Valentine's Day to everyone and Oregon's birthday. I'm just wondering if Chris, if you could send us the link to make that testimony. I think what's sometimes challenging for me in this role is like, I'm in all of these meetings with all the important people saying all the things. And if we need to go and make public comment, we can, but I'm not always sure like when it's overkill. But if you could send us the link, I think all of us West adjacent mayors would love to comment on it.
Yeah, and 99W adjacent mayors and others too. Yeah, I can do that. I will fish that out and send it. We don't have chat functions in our Zoom, but I can send it to you by email.
And also, tomorrow's Commissioner Rogers' birthday. And so happy birthday, it's fitting that the state and our great statesmen share the same birthday.
Hopefully it wasn't the same year, but.
Well, with Roy, you don't know.
I bet he's never heard that before.
All right, with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting for today. Enjoy your day today, and again, enjoy your Valentine's Day tomorrow. Take care. And
Adios.
We'll see
Happy
you at the
birthday,
shows
Roy.
tonight.
Hey, everybody. Happy birthday, Roy.
Happy birthday, Roy.
Thanks to everyone. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday. Okay, now I just figure out how to get out of here.